Hey folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Today we are talking about Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, one of the most recent releases for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, as well as not being a setting or an adventure or a campaign. This is sort of like Xanathar's Guide to Everything and Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes and Volo's Guide to Monsters, which is more background information. This one, though, is much more like Xanathar's, where it is almost completely rules stuff. I'll be very honest with you up front, I was not terribly impressed with this product. I don't know what I was expecting going in. Sometimes I have my expectations set too high. Honestly, I got this one so I could share it with my daughter Emma, who loves playing D&D and loves the character of Tasha, to which I go, she's Oza's mother in Greyhawk, right? And she had absolutely no idea what Greyhawk was. And once I got done crying a little bit, I got over it. And honestly, when I'm done with this review and we get the episode up, I'm probably going to give this to her because there's not a whole lot in here that I can use for my game. But what I am going to do is give you her counterpoint to it, what she loved about this, as opposed to what I found to just be sort of, So also, right up front, we're going to talk about what I think is the 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to this book, which is the changing of racial modifiers. While I appreciate what they were trying to do, and I understand it, to me, it makes the entire game now seem like a min-max simulation. Because if you want to play, a mountain, let's go with a hill dwarf. You want to play with a hill dwarf, you get the +3 or +2, +1, and you can now put it anywhere you want. So where normally you would be healthier than most and be slightly wiser, now you can put that +2 into intelligence and you can play a hill dwarf wizard. Or you can put that +2 into charisma, which part of me goes, every time I hear that. And you can now be a hill dwarf bard or warlock or paladin or sorcerer or one of the other 18 classes that uses charisma as its primary attribute. So I don't like that. I'll be honest with you. This is sort of I'm coming off as a grognard on this one. I'm a little old-fashioned. The reason for that is I sort of like the traditional approach. Am I wrong in that? I don't think I'm wrong. I think I might be in an aging minority, and that's perfectly fine. However, I feel like when I make a character, I'm going to stay with what is presented in the player's handbook, simply because I feel like that way, if you decide you want to play, say, a halfling wizard who focuses in divination, then you can, but you're not going to have the instant high intelligence that, say, a gnome illusionist would, or the bonus to intelligence that a human could give you as well. Okay, so that's out of the way. Anything new for the classes? Well, with the classes now, you get a whole bunch. They introduced the Artificer, which personally I think is the most interesting thing in this book. I'm actually tempted to play an Artificer just to see if I can pull it off. Okay, that's cool, but they give you a whole lot of subclasses for all of the existing classes themselves. This is where I sort of go, because I read through all of them, none of them particularly appealed to me. What it feels like they're doing is everything is now getting some form of magic. And for those of us who like to play the fighter types who don't have some kind of magic attached, then I feel like it's really lessening the options that we have. My daughter, however, disagrees with me, and she likes the fact that now you have magical options for most of the classes. So you might not be a primary caster like, say, the wizard or cleric or druid or sorcerer would be. And you may be a secondary caster like the paladins or the rangers, or even what she and I term a tertiary caster, which is like the eldritch knight or the one with a rogue that I can't think of the name of right now. One of the subclasses she was particularly excited about was the Druid of Spores, which is essentially the Mushroom Druid or the Druid of Rot, because she really liked the idea. Nothing mechanically appealed to her, but she liked the idea of thematically that the druid this would be a druid who represents the fact that all life must end, all life must decompose and rot and putrefy in order for new life to come out of it. I can't argue with her about that in the slightest bit because it is really cool. She also really liked the druid of wildfire because of the idea that fire is needed in order to wipe the slate clean, if for lack of a better phrase. And you get sort of this fire elemental companion that comes out of it. Now, some of the things I was just unimpressed with from the ground up, i.e. the Rune Knight. It didn't feel right with me. It didn't sit well. I don't understand how thematically it can really be inserted into a game. And folks, feel free to explain it to me down below if you really think it can. I'm okay with that. I'm always open to new ideas with it. Just don't call me a moron in the process. Every class got some additional features. For most of the spellcasting classes, it's the ability to swap out one cantrip for another when you level up. That way if you're a wizard and you feel like you're permanently stuck with dancing lights and you've never found a good way to use dancing lights effectively in a game, you can swap that out when you get to a certain level. Although I present to you, if you're a wizard and you haven't figured out really useful uses of dancing lights, I mean, for God's sake, it can turn into a glowing ethereal form, then you probably shouldn't be playing a wizard in the first place. I know. Quit judging, Kurt. Quit judging. Fighters get some more options too, which include the option to... There are new fighting styles that you can use and the ability to swap some out at a later time. All right. One of the other big things this book brought to us was the introduction of psionics into Dungeons & Dragons. I'm one of the few really old school players who does not have an issue with psionics. It's not presented as something weird and new and terrifying here as it was in first edition AD&D. Psionics bluntly sucked because very few characters had it, so either the incredibly lucky or the incredibly adept at cheating could have psionic characters that could do all these wonderful, powerful things, and like most Gygaxian additions to the game, was either feast or famine. If you rolled really well, who needs spells? Here it is presented as an additional option and things you can do. You gain psionic energy dice, for instance, with the Psi Warrior that can fuel some abilities. This feels quite a bit like the the Fighter Martial Archetype Battle Master, I believe it was called, or something like that, where you have all of these maneuvers you can use to enhance your fighting ability. Now, there are really 3 psionic classes in here, one for the fighter, one for the rogue, and one for the monk. I feel like they fit in just fine, and as presented, I don't see an issue with incorporating this into your average D&D game with very little effort. One of the things you could do that would be interesting is remove magic, or at least wizardly magic, altogether, and psionics are about the only thing, psionics and cleric power are about the only thing that work, and then you go, ha, I play Dark Sun too. Another nice addition, I can't complain about this one too much, is they give you Battle Master builds, which is how to take the battle maneuvers that you get with that class and combine them into one theme. So you're not necessarily picking and choosing, which you still can do. This just gives you some pre-made packages for it. All right, outside of the classes, there are new spells that get introduced, although there really aren't that many, frankly. And there are, of course, new sorcery power, new bloodlines for sorcery. There are new patrons for warlocks. New backgrounds that also fit rather nicely into some things. And then we get into some of the magic items. Again, this is where my daughter and I differ in ideas. Nothing in here I found particularly exciting, other than the reemergence of some artifacts that were from first edition, like the Mighty Servant of Luoco, or the Machine of Lum the Mad, or the Teeth of Davnir Vaughn. I'm sorry, I've never been able to keep that one in my head. and what they do now in 5th edition rules, which I think is kind of cool to see some of those things come back. Magic Tattoos, on the other hand, did absolutely nothing for me. However, my daughter Emma thought they were some of the neatest things she's ever seen. Does that make her wrong or me wrong? No, it's just a different point of view in how we do things. I like to see younger players get excited about things that I don't. For instance, I grew up on Raymond E. Feist. I've read the first 4 books in the Rift War saga so many times I can't begin to tell you, and a lot of my fantasy role-playing is patterned after those. Make me right or wrong? I don't think so. Finally, the back end of the book brings up a lot of things like how to do puzzles, how to do riddles, how to do traps, which I think is a valuable use of space in this book, if you want the truth. Do you need this book? Honestly, I don't think there's much in here I would use. There are a couple feats that I think are nice, one of them being it allows any character that has a fighting style to be able to add another fighting style to what they can do. So you can have both duelist and defense when you have any character that has a fighting style, and then you get the benefits of both. Not a lot in here I need to run with. As I said at the beginning, I'm going to give this to Emma. Emma, if you're watching this and you think I've misrepresented your opinion or you want to say something else, please fill it into the comments below. I'd be more than happy to hear from you. And the same with all you guys. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.